為逃避戰亂同政治不正，一批中國人自2000年起由北方逃離，先係中國南方，然後世界各地，最終嚟到加拿大。佢哋喺呢度生活終老，留低唔少珍貴嘅回憶，塑造加拿大嘅歷史同文化。大家好，我係主持 Titus， 一星期已過，今期離地縱橫同大家暫離政治嘅喧囂，同大家介紹一出現正上演嘅話劇，以及話劇背後2000年客家人嘅漂流史。
Winter has come.
OK， 今日我哋嘅嘉賓咧係黃家榮Kevin Matthew Wong 嘅，佢係話劇人和嘅編劇、導演同演員。Kevin 你好
，Hello 你好
，Yeah，and 地緣政治學者Sam 嘅Sam 你好
，Hello 大家好。
非常之唔好意思，我哋非常之突然咁樣做今日做呢集啦。咁因為其實我諗雖然其實已經上咗演，應該有2個禮拜I guess，但係人和呢套劇其實都係一個幾 interesting 嘅一樣嘢，都係講文化植根去另外一個地方嘅一個。我諗係一個 case study， 一個故事。嗱，咁需要同大家觀眾咧道聲歉嘅，因為咧今次咧Kevin 佢嘅廣東話唔係太好，咁所以咧我哋嘅討論大部分會用英語進行嘅。Our discussion will be in English most of the time because Kevin's limitation on Cantonese. Sorry to tell our audience. Okay, first of all, I would love Kevin to talk about what is the story about and how it was developed.
Yeah, so the story is about how a couple of years ago there was an event in Markham, Ontario called the World Hakka Conference, and it was the first time ever that the conference of usually thousands of Hakka people was hosted in Canada. And around that time, one of the aunties in my community asked if I would be a host of this event and this play that was taking place in the conference. And I was really nervous. I didn't want to do it. And that story became the foundation of this play called Benevolence. So in the play, I talk about how this auntie calls me, and then I go on this journey to discover what being Hakka is to me. And this journey takes me all over the country. I start in Toronto, I go to Vancouver, I go to Victoria, BC, and then I come back and perform the show in Markham, Ontario. So it's really a story that is very Canada, it's very Toronto, and it's very West Coast.
Sam 你嗱，當然我哋大家都未有機會睇過戲啦。阿 Sam 你覺得你聽呢個故事驟眼你嘅第一印象係點樣咧？
其實我哋之前都即係同 Titus 你記得啦，我哋之前都講過呢個客家故事，即係 we talk about this shows many months ago to actually we really interested in this show because when we talk about the concept of Hakka, it's a concept to talk about the diaspora group, right? In another way that to talk about diaspora group or talk about how a group of people have been all the time being regarded as the external resident. They are not the one very local in a place, no matter they move and resettle in a place for many, many years, for we talk about thousands of years, but those people already try to consolidate their identity and conceptually that they understand themselves as the Hakka. And in this show that I think the most interesting part is about those Hakka. Firstly, this concept is being used to talk about those Hakka population in China, usually, right? For example, from Zhongyuan, right? From Henan, right? We talk about the for the current now, the China is from the middle or even northern part of China, and then they are being moved to the southern part of mainland China, and then become a Hakka population there. And the show that you mentioned and is inspired for the show is talk about in Canada, in Markham. In Canada, in Toronto, actually we have a lot of Hakka. Those Hakka moving to Canada and resettle here. Some of them are from mainland China directly to Canada, and many of them actually, those Hakka now mainly use it for those people. One part is about mainly from China or Hong Kong to Toronto. Another bigger groups is actually from those Hakka moving from China to India, and from India now moving to and resettle in Canada. So I recall my understanding about one scholar mentioning about whether we have the liberty to choose our identity and where we live. For the first, we have maybe for the first round that we don't have choice, because right by where we born, that we out of our control, right? Is but when we try to have immigration, right? If we migrate to another place, it seems like we have a second life that we can choose. But with the concept of Hakka, it makes the whole things complicated and full of dynamics, that for our second time, whether we are under our control to move. For example, we talk about 2,000 years ago that those people are being pushed to move out from one place to another one, and now moving to the migration, maybe the second and third rounds of life, right? That they can choose or not to choose. So those mix together become a really complicated and for dynamic and culturally dynamical topic. We can use this to talk about many of the diaspora group in Canada or in all around the world, and also about the complicated reflection over the identity conception.
Yeah, I always think it's a little bit hard to contemplate about the concept of Hakka. In Chinese, Hak is a guest, and Ga is a home, a family, things like that. Be a guest in your own family, things like that is a little bit hard to understand the concept. In terms of Hakka, the concept of Hakka, what do you think about this concept? How do you understand your identity, your tradition, Kevin?
Yes, for me, the Chinese characters Hak and Ga are like so foundational to my conception of this this identity, you know. Because as a Canadian, I recognize that we are all guest people here. Like we are all on Indigenous land to start, you know. And I think it's so interesting that for a lot of Canadians, they may feel that they're in a guesthood 101 or 201, like early understanding of what it means to be on somebody else's land. You know, in BC, for example, there's no treaties. People are actually just squatting on Indigenous land. You know, and for Hakka people, I believe we're in guesthood MA or we're in guesthood PhD, you know, like hopefully there's something in our story of being guest people and negotiating what it means to be ourselves without losing ourselves in so many different places that can be helpful to Canadians. That's kind of why I started this show. And what I find very exciting about Hakka in Toronto is that there are Hakka Jamaicans, there's Hakka Mauritians, there's Hakka Indians, there's, you know, Hakka South Africans, so many different groups, Hakka from Ganzhou, a lot from Ganzhou, there's a whole society. And we all have to figure out not only who it is that we are individually, but how we can come together as a group under this umbrella. And I find that so powerful that despite our differences and despite being in so many different places and receiving different parts of those cultures, that we can come together under a common understanding of a story that we have, and also sometimes a set of values that we share across being guest people in all of those places. One thing that I think Hakka don't really have in our history or in our conception of our own history is that we don't go to places to colonize them. Like because we conceptualize ourselves as guests, we're not looking to take over the land from you. We're looking to keep ourselves and not lose ourselves, but adapt things that are interesting, valuable, mutually interesting between our cultures. And I also see the Hakka story as like a skipping stone. Like there's somebody on the shore who's thrown this stone 2,000 years ago, and it just keeps going dot, 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 on the water. And it's easy.
But where
for
is
us
the family? We understand the guest part.
Yes. Well, so I think that the family part of it is, for me, at least in the show, a lot of it, what you see is my own family. My grandmother plays a huge part in the show, for example. My dad, I impersonate my dad at the beginning of the show. And so at least in terms of a personal, on the family side, the Ga side, I take it very much as the contemporary family. How does our family deal with being who we are? And it's not as academic, I would say, the family part in the show. It's very lived experience for me. It's very much, how does the family treat having guests? How does the family act as hosts when people are visiting our home? That's kind of what I try to show as a Hakka sensibility. And for me, it's very confusing because my parents grew up in Hong Kong. And then my dad went to Belgium as a teenager, and then he came to Canada. And my mom went to Timmins, Ontario for high school and then moved to Toronto. But
very different part of Canada, by the way.
Yes, yeah, very different part of Canada. And my granddad was a Chinese chef. So he had a restaurant in Antwerp, Belgium, serving Chinese food. So he was figuring out how to serve Cantonese food to Belgians, and then also not lose his Hakka-ness. So at our dinner table, we would have Hakka dishes, Cantonese dishes, and I wouldn't know which was which. Or my grandma, would speak Cantonese on the phone, and sometimes she would speak Hakka on the phone, and I don't know which one is which language, So I think that's also a quite Hakka experience.
Yeah, actually, it's very interesting, right? Try to use a Hakka perspective to present globalization. Actually, is in and around of globalization, right? And you just mentioned one thing is very important, that most of the people on Canadian soil, we should use the same concept Hakka, that we are the guests on the soil when we include the understanding about the indigenous concept in the understanding of Canadian history. And I would really like to know more about when you try to prepare for the show, that's actually Hakka is the concept you mentioned, have a lot of very diversified and a lot of culturally dynamical meanings that when we talk about it. So when you prepare the show, which part that you can share that you also feel so frustrated and struggling how to present and express this kind of concept or a particular plot in the show that you think, okay, this part is when you prepared, it takes a lot of time to consider how to express this idea or your thoughts in this particular plot.
Yes, there's one moment in the show that's late in the show in which there's a fight scene. And it happens between one of the elders who is very in support of me taking part in this performance and one of the elders who doesn't think I should take part in this performance at the World Hakka Conference. And it's loosely based on some real debates that were happening a couple of years ago about, here's this Juksing kid, right? Like, is he supposed to be our MC for this show in which we have 3,000 people coming to Markham? And they're going to see our performance of these different, communities of Hakka. Is this the right person to be the MC of this moment? And so that was tough because some of these anxieties about is Kevin right are from real people, and some of them are my own anxieties about, am I right for this thing? Am I enough of this thing? So for me, the biggest debates are about who belongs and who doesn't. Even if we all say that we're Hakka, some of us are going to have an easier acceptance from the other parts of the community than others. and some parts of the community may say, oh, it's Hakka, it's like Hakka words, the language is really what makes the culture. And others say, no, it's values that make the culture. And those debates within the community are ever present. And Canada, I think, is an interesting place in which, I see my elders fight at the community hall about these ideas. And then the next thing you know, they're having a nice meal together over some tea and some, chasubao, it's like, yeah. So it's super interesting. I find all of these debates. So the biggest challenge for me was depicting a truthful and accessible argument about who belongs and who doesn't, and who are we.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I also love to eat, by the way. I would, talking about Hakkas, I have to mention something about Hakka Indian cuisine, because at one point, I brought a 揚州炒飯 from a Hakka Indian restaurant, and it smelled curry. I don't think 揚州炒飯 in Cantonese concept there will be curry in there, but there were curry in my 揚州炒飯 from the Hakka Indian restaurant. Some may say maybe they don't wash the wok thoroughly so that there are some咖喱味. I don't know, but I think You talk about Hakka cuisine with the Cantonese cuisine. Kevin, can you tell me one or two represent dishes that can represent Hakka?
Yes. So there's some great Hakka restaurants in Toronto. Most of the time when people say Hakka cuisine, they do mean Hakka Indian food. Like there's the oldest Chinese Hakka restaurant in Toronto is called Wei Tung. It's just off Dundas Street. And they're really known for chili chicken. So it's like fried chicken with like Indian spices, Chinese and Indian spices mixed together. And that Hakka flavoring in India has become such a big thing that there's some Hakka restaurants, Hakka Indian restaurants, that don't even have any Hakka people associated with it. It just became a cuisine of its own and a flavor profile of Chinese and Indian flavors together. But sometimes we have some Hakka cuisines that we don't consider Hakka cuisine, even though they might be. An example might be some Hakka people who are Hakka Jamaicans who start Jamaican restaurants. Their version of Jamaican dishes may be a bit more Chinese, meaning like from a Cantonese style, maybe they're like more moist, they're wetter flavor profile than other cuisines, right? And that might just be taken for granted as another type of Jamaican restaurant. But actually, there's the infusion of these Chinese ideas in that version of jerk chicken or that version of stew chicken, So I think that's very interesting because there's definitely like Chinese Jamaicans who have restaurants that are Jamaican restaurants. And then for my granddad, he was a Chinese chef. So a lot of the foods that are Hakka foods are very preserved. Like if you think of traditional Hakka foods, because you're thinking about people who have to travel all over the place and, you don't know what the flavors are there. You don't know if you have refrigeration. So like there's a lot of preserved foods, pickled things. Pork belly and taro is a big one, like a braised pork belly is definitely a big popular dish. There's definitely like tofu dishes with like with the filling of the fish. That's a very Hakka dish as well. I forget the name of it.
And the chicken, the salted chicken.
Yes, yeah. So there's lots, yeah. And what I find amazing about it is that it's very philosophical and conceptual what you even call Hakka food, because there's examples of Hakka people making food with different flavor profiles, but it's really marketing, isn't it? It's that the Hakka Indians claimed Hakka food as that, and so that's what we consider in the West as Hakka food. But there's lots for sure. As many places as we've been to, there's cuisines.
So I think I would love to ask Sam another question. It's kind of like as a guest in a home, Hakka, or maybe in a wider concept for the diaspora, like the Hong Kong people to Canada. What we should do, because it's not about politics, but I find that lately in the social media there are quite a lot of people like kind of like kind of like the people in Hong Kong from Hong Kong who come to Canada, they really don't like the election result of Canada. I don't talk about the election result, okay? But I think I'm talking about the attitude. It's just kind of like I don't think they do understand why they choose this kind of government and then they call them stupid, things like that. Or I'm not blaming them for not being polite or whatever, but I want to understand their attitude, why they do that, and what we should do.
I think I try to put it into another way to see it. Like, of course, you talk about many extreme cases and commentating about the election result, but I would like to focus on another part about more philosophical part about diaspora group and Hakka. The concept behind Hakka is about a kind of identity and cultural, and more important in history, actually about political struggle about where am I and who am I, right? Those are the question those question mark bring along for those population that they're moving from one place to another place, that just like the nomadic group, like they're moving from one place to another place, that whether they have a really settled down, right? And in Chinese we talk about it, 何處是吾家, right? Where is our destination, where is our home? The home can be another concept. It's about the destination, and I think it's also a struggle for many people who moving to Canada as a immigrants country. Many of the people here all migrate from other places to here with their own reasons, right? And moving here, whether we really settle down here or we still thinking about our motherland, right? Where is our motherland? So this is for the first generation of immigrants. Like, for example, I'm the first generation of immigrants here, but how about for like Kevin, like the second and third generations, how they consider where is their home? Can we have a plural form of homes? Those are the concept behind. And more philosophically, we talk about the cultural shock. Of course, it doesn't mean that Hakka, that we only be a guest there, that we simply adapt to all the cultures and rules and in a place that, but we still can see that how our cultures can be another stream here, establishing a very unique community with our people, our economy, including we talk about the food, right? It's one part of the economy in a place that, and another way out is whether we also have our influence over the mainstream of the society. So it takes time, and always have this kind of dynamic, right? How we integrate into the place. But I see something very different particularly we talk about in Toronto, that when I do the research over the urban study about Toronto, I would say is really a place that we treasure and really, I would say I really love the multiculturalism here. That is a real multiculturalism here, that we can see more than 100 different ethnicity groups exercising, using their languages actively, have their communities, economy, and cultural groups here actively here being preserved here and developed here. And comparing to other international or global cities like in New York, even though we have a very global cities and still have a lot of people migrating to New York, but we have a very strong mainstream American culture that you either being marginalized or you have to integrate into it, right? 係一個文化大熔爐 versus 真係多元文化 in Toronto, that we can preserve our own, but at the same time, how we try to mingle and integrate our unique cultures into the Canadian culture. And or I would say that from another way out, that from the show, I would really recommend everyone try to watch it. So it is not just for one to look at the concept of Hakka, but because everyone here, we are Hakka, right? From another way, that how we see ourselves, our identity. At the same time, I would say that we also try to see the Canadian, what actually is Canadian identity or the nationalism about Canada. That do we prefer a more a conservative way out of a very nationalist Canadian identity, or we try to have a more liberal, multiculturalist Canadian identity that we currently see. So this is a kind of struggle. This struggle is not just about Hong Kong diaspora. Of course, we see a lot of this kind of fasang and a lot of like this kind of extreme comments after the election. But the main point is that we see that this is a kind of cultural and political dynamic over the practice of daily life, and also about our concept about utopia, right? And whether those and Canada just like a puzzle that everyone try to contribute a piece of it and putting on it, or we try to know we have to mingle and integrate all into one, or we try to keep the multiculturalist concept for everyone here. So I think the show is a must-go show so that's why I really highly recommend everyone try to watch the show. And then I would like the show to try to have a more different shows here, right? Not just maybe Kevin, you can try to by the end of this program today, that you can try to introduce and talk about the details of these shows. And we all looking forward to having more these shows, right, being played in not just in Toronto, but in Canada.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So some final words for Kevin, the show, how to buy tickets, when
for our audience,
where.
how we can go and watch it.
Sure. So we'd love to share the show with you. You can get tickets now at TarragonTheatre.com. Tarragon is TarraGon, theater THEATRE.com. The show is called Benevolence, and it runs until May the 4th. And then we're planning some other touring in Canada, so you may hear about that soon. But we'd love to share the show as many places as possible, because we think that what I've been very happy with is, especially for Chinese audiences engaging with this work and younger Chinese audiences, that they find a lot of resonance in the questions that we ask ourselves every day about what it is that we're doing here with this very unique kind of experience and these very unique internal debates and struggles in our community. So what I hope is that this title, Benevolence, which is like a deeper kind of kindness, I hope that everybody who comes to see the show feels that as an audience member, because I think it's really important that we feel that welcome and that benevolence, so that we can get into some deep philosophical questions. So I look forward to performing for folks, and thank you so much for having me today.
係啦，咁應該會響下低啦，我哋會打一啲嘅詳情嘅，咁所以咧大家就留意一下詳情啦嚇。兩個嘉賓暫時睇唔到，因為我之後先打落去。係啦，咁時間差唔多啦。如果大家對我哋呢個禮拜嘅討論有進一步意見咧，可以喺 Facebook 搜尋呢個 Late Day News 遲一日嘅新聞 LATEDATNEWS 一個字咧，就揾到我哋嘅 page 噶啦。YouTube、Facebook、Instagram、Thread 甚至如果閣下有心請我哋飲杯咖啡嘅話 ，Buy Me a Coffee 所有 account 嘅 handle 都歸於一統，全部都係 Late Day HKPod 尾㗎。呢個節目每逢星期四多倫多時間晚上7點，即係香港時間星期五早上8點啦，去 Spotify 提供影像直播。令我哋呢集淨係得星期四啫，都係晚上7點，即係香港時間星期五嘅8點啦，向 YouTube 分正常嚟講係2節，今次係1節播出㗎。同時響各大 podcast 包括呢個 Apple Podcast、Amazon Music、Audible 提供聲音版本。呢期離地縱橫係2025年4月30號多倫多時間晏晝3點，即係香港時間5月1號凌晨3點錄影嘅。再一次多謝 Kevin 同 Sam， 多謝兩位。
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
下星期再見，拜拜。